by some of these distractions around the Kaaba and around the Holy Mosque. But when I came to the Kaaba, the first impression I got was that nothing can ever capture the beauty of the Kaaba, no matter what it is. And the second thought that came to my mind was, usually if you are not a photogenic person, you don't look good on photographs. But they can doctor it in such a way that even if you're not a handsome person, you can be made to look handsome. There's even some photos where I appear to be very handsome. But it's a trick of the camera. But despite this development in terms of the technology, whatever photograph or whatever video has been taken of the Kaaba, it falls short of the actual Kaaba. There's absolutely nothing. If you haven't seen the actual Kaaba and you've seen a picture of the Kaaba, then I tell you now, you haven't seen the Kaaba. A picture is not a true resemblance of what the Kaaba is. And as was my concern, I thought to myself, because you see many pictures as people making tawaf, they become distracted by many things. And I thought likewise I would be distracted. But really, Jamaatul Muslimin, there is simply nothing in and around the Kaaba that could draw you away from the pool of the Kaaba. That tower, which is so much higher and so much bigger than the Kaaba, once you come into the Holy Mosque and once you start performing your tawaf, it is as if nothing else exists except for the Kaaba. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us time and time again the tawfiq and the ability to visit the Holy Mosque in Mecca, so that we can set our sights on the Holy Kaaba, on the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another reflection which I had, and inshallah we'll end off on this. When we perform the tawaf of the Kaaba, the ulama have unanimously agreed that once you come to Mecca and once you have performed your Umrah, the next greatest act of worship that you can do is nothing else but make tawaf of the Holy Kaaba. So as much as you possibly can, you should busy yourself with going around and making tawaf all the time. But what is this tawaf all about? What do we do in tawaf? The primary focus of tawaf is dua. You supplicate unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what supplication do you have to read? There's no specific supplication. Whatever dua you want to read, you can read. So while you're performing tawaf, you're making dua. And then one is thinking about these du'as. What is the significance of these du'as? Now these du'as have many significance. One of them was explained by one of our visiting guests when he says that when you make dua, you're actually pleading to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are placing your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are realizing that iman and conviction in your heart, and you're only placing your reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As I was making tawaf, one reflection came to my mind. And that reflection was that what is a dua? A dua in reality, right, it is a mirror image of any society. So if you want to see what the value of a given society is, what you need to do is look at what that society wishes for, what they pray for, and what they supplicate for. So whatever we are supplicating for, whatever we are asking for as individuals and as communities, it means we are working towards that. So when we are making tawaf and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً, oh Allah, give us goodness in this world. What are we actually saying? We are making dua for it, and then we need to consciously strive in order to realize that. When we're going around the Kaaba and we're saying, oh Allah, أَغْنِنَا مِنَ الْفَقْرِ وَقْضِ عَنَّا دَيْنَنَا, oh Allah, that free us from poverty. When we come out of the Kaaba, away from Mecca, we should actually be striving to free ourselves from poverty. When we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while we're making tawaf, that, oh Allah, free us from any debt, then it means when we come outside of the tawaf, we must live a life of consciously trying to rid ourselves of debt. So this is the reason why we make tawaf and why we make dua in the tawaf. Dua basically sets the benchmark for us. Whatever we ask for, we need to strive towards that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, give us the tawfiq, inshallah, And this is just but a few of the reflections which our Maulana has asked me to share with the congregation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the reality of that in my life and in your life as well. One last incident. One day I happened to be a bit late. And I sat outside of the haram. So I was sitting between two persons. The one was sitting on a chair and the other one was sitting on the floor. So they must have been from India or Pakistan, I'm not too sure. And they were conversing with one another in Urdu. So I wasn't eavesdropping, just because they were talking over my head. The one is sitting on a chair and the other one is down there. So the one brother is saying to the other brother, and that is a reflection which all of us have. The one brother was saying to the other brother, but it's very much hotter in Makkah than what it is in Medina. So the one elderly person sitting on the chair said, yes, it's true. But you know why it's hotter in Makkah than it is Medina? He says because in Makkah is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this quality of jalal. Allah has this quality of magnificence and majesty. And the way this is expressed in worldly terms is in terms of the heat. So where you're going to find the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to find the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expressed in terms of the heat. So therefore when you go to Makkah, and it happens to be very hot, you should actually bask. You should actually enjoy the hotness. Why? Because this is from the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One day I remember, generally when we go, we perform one Umrah. And if you sit in the durus, in terms of the haram, the shuyukh over there, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them, they are of the opinion that one should only perform one Umrah, and afterwards you must only make tawaf. It is however the opinion of many of the mainstream ulama, that you should make Umrah as much as you possibly can. So if you go in and you make one Umrah, and you're able to perform Umrah the next day, make another Umrah, and make another Umrah, and make another Umrah. And especially for us, who are not afforded the opportunity to make Umrah all the time. When you go for the first time, your first Umrah, it is very unsettled. There's a certain degree of apprehension. And there's also a certain degree is that, look, I need to get done with my rituals. So it's done in a very quick way. However, when you do it the second time and the third time, that is when you really start benefiting from the amal. But nevertheless, when I was making another Umrah, and I was walking down and I was walking towards the haram. And the Umrah, I performed it so after Asr. I left and I was coming back to the haram. So as I was walking, as you walk down the streets, there's a whole lot of hotels on the side. And what happens is, as you walk past the hotels, and then the cold air blows out. So you walk, it's very hot, and then you get cool as you walk past. But because I was thinking of the jalal of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so I said to myself that, I need to walk on the other side of the street, so I can avoid the aircon. But the aircon is going to make me cool. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it hot. So if the hotness is from the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I only want to be basked in the hotness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the spirit in which we go to Makkah. That is the spirit in which we go to Medina. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept, inshallah.